All right, let's get right to it. We're breaking down a number that affects millions of American retirees, the new Social Security adjustment for 2026. Now, on paper, it looks like a raise, but the real story, as we're about to see, is a whole lot more complicated. So here's the official number, 2.8%. That is the cost of living adjustment, or COLA, for 2026. And, this single percentage point is what's going to dictate the size of Social Security checks for tens of millions of people starting in January. But that really leads us to the most important question, doesn't it? The one we're really digging into today. How much of that raise are you actually going to get to keep? Because after you factor in all the other costs, the answer, well, it's probably smaller than you think. A lot smaller. Okay, first let's just look at the official numbers. We'll break down what this 2.8% increase means on paper, according to the government's own briefing. So how does that percentage translate into actual dollars and cents? Well, for an average retired worker, that 2.8% bump works out to be about $50 to $56 a month. And if you're a married couple and you're both receiving benefits, you're looking at a combined increase of around $88. What this does is push the average monthly benefit for a single retiree up to $1,976, so close to that $2,000 mark. And look, any increase is welcome, right? But this is only half the story. And now for the other shoe to drop. The costly catch. Because just as that Social Security check goes up, so does something else that gets taken right back out. This brings us to a concept that financial analysts are calling the Medicare trap. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's this frustrating situation where the hike in your Medicare Part B premium just eats up a huge chunk of your Social Security COLA. It's gone before you ever even see it. And here's the culprit. The standard monthly premium for Medicare Part B, it's set to jump to $202.90 in 2026. That is an $18 a month increase. So it really is a case of one hand giving and the other hand taking away. So let's do the real-world math. This is where the rubber meets the road, and we see the bottom line impact for the average American on Social Security. And honestly, the calculation here is painfully simple. Let's walk through it. Step 1, you get your COLA increase, right? Let's call it $50 for the average person. Step 2, that new $18 Medicare cost gets automatically taken right out, which brings us to step 3. Your real raise, what you can actually spend, is just $32. $32. Let that sink in for a second. After all the headlines about a 2.8% raise, the actual increase in your spending power for the average retiree comes down to about $32 a month. This chart really puts it into perspective. Think about that $50 raise. More than a third of it, about 35%, is gone. It goes straight to Medicare. You only end up keeping about 65% of your own cost of living adjustment. And this gets to the heart of why, for so many seniors, this raise doesn't feel like a raise at all. There's this huge gap, this major disconnect between the official inflation numbers and the actual costs people are facing every single day. And it's not just a feeling. People are speaking up. Senior advocacy groups are, frankly, angry. They're arguing that the formula the government uses to calculate all this stuff, it's called the CPI-W, is just completely out of touch with how seniors actually spend their money. So here's the core of the issue. That official inflation metric, it tracks a basket of goods for, urban workers. But that's not the reality for retirees. Seniors spend a much bigger slice of their budget on healthcare, on housing, and on food. And in those specific categories, prices have been going up like crazy. For many, it feels a lot closer to 10%, not 2.8. And let's be real, a $32 raise isn't going to cover a 10% jump in your rent. So what comes next? Well, as you can imagine, this whole situation has fired up the discussion in Washington yet again about whether the entire system is broken and needs to be fixed. There is some ideas floating around. You've got bills like the Social Security 2100 Act and the COLA Plus bill. The main idea behind a lot of these is to switch the formula. They want to use something called the CPI-E, the Consumer Price Index for the elderly, which is specifically designed to track senior spending habits. It makes a lot of sense, right? But for now, it's just talk. Nothing has actually been passed into law. So we're left with this question. While the official numbers show a 2.8% increase, the on-the-ground reality for millions is a net gain of just $32 a month. In an economy where the cost of essentials just keeps climbing, is that really enough to keep up?